Hello and welcome. My name is Waleed Mehr. I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer here to walk through the Microsoft SC-300 Identity and Access Administrator Associate course with you. Imagine your organization's identity environment running smoothly. Users accessing resources securely, permissions kept up to date, and threats detected before they cause harm. But how do we keep it that way? Well, that's where monitoring and maintaining Entra ID comes in. In this session, you'll discover how proactive monitoring, automated alerts, and regular maintenance help you safeguard identities, ensure compliance, and keep your environment resilient against evolving threats. Get ready to learn the strategies that keep your identity infrastructure secure and reliable every day. So let's get started. Now, to be able to monitor and audit your data in Entra environment, it's important to understand what data is available to you and for how long. And for that reason, it's good to know that typically looking at different types of logs that are available for us, how long they are kept for. If you are working with a free version of Entra because you have M365 and you have Entra enabled as part of that, typically, most of your logs are going to be available for you under the audit logs and sign logs for roughly 7 days for you to work with. After 7 days, you won't have access to them anymore. For your multi-factor authentication usage, that's kept for 30 days. And typically, if you want to maintain this for longer periods of time, you can either look into moving onto a paid version of your Entra environment or looking into exporting these logs out, which we'll come to a bit later. Now, if you are looking to work with a premium P1 or P2 license, these logs are kept in your environment for a month, for 30 days, for all different resources, typically audit logs, sign logs, your multi-factor authentication data, all kept for 30 days. Now, there is one variation to this. If you have P2 license and you're using identity protection as a solution in your environment, under identity protection, the logs for risky users is kept unlimited period of time, so there's no limitation on that. Now, typically, this particular feature for identity protection is only available for P2 users. So for P2 users, typically that's kept for unlimited period of time. Now for the free and P1 users, they do get to see some information about this. However, the detail onto what is going on with that is not pretty much available in depth. So for you to be able to look at the details of identity protection risks that are coming back as a report and information, you must have a P2 license for that. And for the same reason, when you're working with identity protection, the risky sign-ins, which typically your sign-in data is kept for 30 days under P2, just for your identity protection, that risky sign-in data or the sign-in data that's associated with risks is maintained for 90 days in your environment. Now let's jump onto the portal and have a look at some of these details and work through them. All right, I'm back onto entra.microsoft.com, which is my Entra Admin Center. And all I'm going to do is simply scroll down to the bottom of my screen and on the blade and simply look for the part under Entra that talks about monitoring. Now, just looking at the area under monitoring and health, we have quite a few different options that we can explore as part of monitoring and health. Now, this is for my entire Entra that I'm looking to manage. However, when you are within a particular feature of an Entra, every time you look at the blade, you'll always see a small section of monitoring as part of that anyway, which we'll cover just in a few moments. Now, to begin with, let's have a look at my sign-in logs. Now, as I go into my sign-in logs, this should show all the different sign-ins that we've had throughout in the last 30 days. Currently, it's showing me only last 24 hours. I could always toggle that back to 1 month. So like I said, the reports are available for me for 30 days, and I can customize that for it to go back as far as 30 days. Now, I could add other filters to this. If I wanted to sift through this data to understand where it can show me some details, I can filter this through based on user and principal names, based on IP addresses, based on quite a few other things that I might have running in my environment. Again, depending on what you're trying to look for from this data and find out what's going on in your environment. And again, you can filter through this. Currently, we are on the tab for user sign-ins at the moment. Again, you have options to look at interactive, non-interactive sign-ins. Someone who hasn't signed in for a while, service principal sign-ins, and manage identity sign-ins. Again, if you're using any of those resources in your environment, if you want to go through filtering that data, you can do that under your sign-in logs here. Now, again, a question that could come to mind: 30 days, maybe not long enough for us. We want to maintain this for at least 3 months so we can analyze on user activities or user behavior analytics. We want to pick up some more data from here. By default, this is 30 days. Can I extend this? Well, the simple answer is no. There's no way to go into this portal to say extend my retention period for more than 30 days. However, we have other ways of managing that. You can simply go and download this log from here under JSON or CSV document, and then feed that into another solution that you might have that can help you analyze this data. Or you could export this out directly from here into some of your solutions that you might be running. For instance, you could be using Sentinel, which again uses a log analytics workspace in the backend to analyze a lot of data. That means you can push this data out to a log analytics workspace as an export, and you can retain that in the log analytics workspace for as long as you need. Now, over here, all I need to do is hit add diagnostic settings to this, and I can go into choosing what am I taking from here. Do I need everything? Do I need certain parts of this? And bear in mind, some of this might come at a cost. Again, if I click on some of these resources, let's assume I'm taking audit logs and sign-in logs. Maybe I want to see risky users and risky events as well. And we'll go and add, let's say, network access alerts as well. So that's the only part of the data that I wanted to take away. By all means, you can take all of that if you need. I can send this to a log analytics workspace, which would be a resource for me in my Azure subscription. So I can go in here and define where it goes, and I can plug that into one of my existing log analytics workspaces and say, hey, put this into a log analytics workspace that I have already got running. And it will start feeding this data into that as part of this diagnostic settings. Or I could say I want that in the log analytics workspace, but I also want to store it in a storage as an archive. Now, this is me exporting it twice. Again, the charge on that would be double because I'm now doing two different things. The space it consumes in log analytics workspace comes at a cost. The space it consumes in the storage account comes at an additional cost. So you have to bear some of those things in mind when you're planning to do this. I don't have to do both of them. I can pick and choose one of them and export them out there if I needed to. I can also look at pushing this to an event hub that can then help me in pushing this onto other solutions that I might be running that are not currently onboarded into my environment, and I can push them there. Or I can simply look at a third-party partner that I might be working on as a solution. I can simply go and add that. If I've onboarded that in here, I can simply bring that in here to say, hey, push this data into that solution. Maybe I have further data prep on that. Maybe I have data analysis, machine learning embedded onto some of those solutions, and I can push this data from there, from here to those solutions and analyze that information or retain it for longer periods of time. For now, we're not going to do any of that. Let's come back out of that and let's go back into the sign-in logs. Now, apart from looking at pushing this data out and sending the diagnostic settings up to the sources, what else can we have a look at? Well, you can have a look at the audit logs. Now, again, in the audit logs, you can have a look at all the different actions somebody's been taken out in your environment, in your Entra setup, and you can monitor everything that went through your Entra. Someone's requested some details, something that was approved, something that failed. You can find out all the information in here in terms of any changes that were made in your environment that are captured in your audit logs. Now, again, just like before, we can go into filtering this. I can go into finding out different things. I can look at different statuses that we have in here. Maybe some things that failed and I'm more interested to pick them up first. So I can go back and look at, okay, in the last 24 hours, some sort of group management failed. Removing a member from my groups didn't work as well. So again, that's something I could see. Remove member from a role. Didn't work, failed. So something that I could go back into checking why and how that happens. Obviously, it's currently showing me 24 hours. Again, this is maintained for 30 days, given that you have P1 or P2 implemented in your environment. So you can see a lot more data going back as far as last 30 days. Now, again, I'm filtering this down just to look at some items that fails. You can always go back and filter this based on whatever you need, and you can find information on in terms of what's been going on in your environment. This could be one of the first steps that you take if there was an issue or a breach or some sort of activity, to come back in here to find out what were the steps that led to that. Maybe somebody logged into a system, they elevated their role or try to gain access to something, and you should be able to manage that in here to find out exactly what's going on in your environment. Now, apart from looking at sign-in logs and audit logs, what I am going to do is come back to the monitoring and health in just a minute. For now, we are going to simply jump back up on the portal and go into my users for a minute. Now, while I am in users, again, we could look at my sign-in and audit logs for the users right here. Again, this is going to be just showing me audit logs based on users that I have in my environment. And if I go into my sign-in logs, it does the same. I can see all the sign-in logs based on the users in my environment in here. So I don't have to go into monitoring to always check this. We can always look at this within my user settings as well. Now, the same process goes with, like I said, many of the features that we have in Entra. You can go back into my groups as well. And under groups, under activities, you can still find audit logs in here to find out everything to do with the groups. If there were any changes made, successful, unsuccessful, people became member, they were eligible for a group, whatever changes happened to a group, you could come back in here and have a look at that under the groups directly. Now, again, one more time, if I have a look at my enterprise applications, for instance, again, if I want to go and monitor what's been going on with these applications, I can go into the audit logs for these applications to see any changes that were made to them. I can always go back in and look at the usage and insights for these applications. Again, this could be a very nice place for me to understand exactly what's going on with every application. For instance, if I have a quick look at one of my applications here, currently, if I look at my Azure portal, I can see successful sign-ins, 2 failed sign-ins here. Let's click on that to find out a little bit more around that. And it's going to go into details around that application and show me some details around that. Now, let's check that out. So if I go into the insights, and I can check all the information there to see what kind of issues we were having in terms of sign-ins. Currently, it shows me 2 errors. One that failed on validating credentials. And again, we have another one that's down there due to session is not valid due to password. And if I double check that, what that is, password expiration. Cool. All right, so you can see that you can drill down into some of these applications to find out information about them. Now, if I take a step back out to these, is again showing me all different applications that I currently have in my environment, so I can drill down into details of these. If you have federated services or federated applications running, you can always go back into your ADFS application details and have a look at some of them in here. You can monitor them as well in this environment. So again, this can give you an insight into your applications if you're looking to monitor and manage your applications in your Entra environment as well. Now, apart from looking at the details on your applications, let's take a step back out and let's go down back onto the monitoring and health section. Now, in here, I have other logs as well, like provision logs or my health logs for my Entra. I can also look at things like log analytics over here. Now, typically for your log analytics workspace, you would have to have a log available for you to drill into. And currently I have one of my log analytics workspace plugged in here that I can analyze data from. Now, if I'm feeding some of my other logs in here, this could be a nice place for me to go and query this data. Typically, you will use Log Analytics Workspace to maintain any logs in any of your solutions that is working in Azure or in cloud. This would become the base of where everything is stored. Typically, for most of my security tools, like likes of my Sentinel and my Defender for Cloud, typically they will look at the Log Analytics Workspace in the backend to pull out the data that they would need to analyze. Again, I could do some of that directly into Entra. I could come in here and I can start querying this data. Now, typically for you to do this, you would need to know how to use Custo Query Language, or KQL in short, because Log Analytics Workspace only work with Custo Query Language. Again, in here, you can type in your query that you have, and it can show you a lot of different type of data. You can, again, filter down and dig down deeper into finding out everything that you need to know from these logs to understand exactly what's going on in your environment and resolve if you have any issues or malicious activities in here. Now, apart from the Log Analytics Workspace, if I look further down, I have the usage and insight right over here as well, which we went into going through the applications as well. So you can go drill that down from right over here to understand what's going on in your environment. Now, apart from looking at the usage for my Entra, one more very interesting area would be to look at an identity score to understand exactly how well your overall Entra current security posture is in your setup. And ideally, this is where I should be able to see an overall score. So let's jump onto my identity score. Now, within your identity score, it tells you all the areas that you can improve on or improve your identity on, and it gives you a scoring based on that as well. Now, I can see that there are certain areas I can get more score from. So, for example, there are 5 more points I can score to improve my current security posture in my environment by implementing the first option that is given me right over here. So I can improve a little bit over here. I've got 6.89 on the second option, where I could have scored 7. Now, in the third point, I'm scoring 7 points out of that, but it's a recommendation that still has there that I could go into protecting some of my risky users. Now, for instance, if I wanted to know what exactly this means, I click on that and it tells me exactly current points that I have. Priority is high, maybe something very important that I need to implement. It explains me a little bit more about what this is and the actions that I can actually perform to complete this particular recommendation that is given me. And it shows me what kind of user impact it has in my environment as well. Now, for whatever reason, if I don't want to perform this, I can simply dismiss this or postpone this if I needed to. However, most of these recommendations are good. They tell you exactly where you might lack some things that you might need to implement. So yeah, you can toggle this between security settings. I've got about 12 recommendations there. Some best practices, again, might not be something I need to implement. If there were any Defender for identity risks here, I could see them there. Currently, I have altogether about 15 recommendations that I could implement in my environment to make sure I have a bit more secure identity set up in my environments. This concludes our session. You've completed the entire SC-300 Identity and Access Administrator Associate series. Throughout this journey, you've built a strong foundation in identity and access administration with Microsoft Entra. You've explored identity concept in Microsoft Entra ID, implemented identity management solutions, worked with authentication and access management, managed access for application, and planned and implemented identity governance strategies. These are the skills that sets you apart as a modern security professional. So what's next? Well, put your new knowledge into practice and start optimizing identity and access administration in your Azure environment. Prepare for SC-300 certification exam with confidence and stay curious. Microsoft Entra and identity management are always evolving, so keep learning and exploring new features. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Check out other Microsoft certification paths, explore advanced modules on Microsoft Learn using aka.ms/learn, or revisit any part of the series whenever you need a refresher. Keep learning, keep securing, and see you in your next Azure Cloud Security Challenge.